Hi, right, everyone, welcome to the podcast. We've got Harley Zorn from WREMO. Hi, Harley, how you doing?
Hello, great. Thanks, Martin.
We've been working, Fact24 been working with Harley at WREMO. God, what was it? We started talking we actually probably started talking last year, I think, originally, but we've been working more closely since early this year, I think, haven't we?
Yeah, yeah. Kind of implementation back in early April, right? But yeah, kind of doing all the planning well back into 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing, I guess, with what you're using Fact24 for, it's quite in the best sense of the word, kind of one dimensional, really. Can you just talk about what your requirements were and kind of what you're using Fact24 for? And it's pretty simple.
Yeah, so basically all of our staff are essentially kind of on call 24/7, right? So not necessarily full expectations that they drop everything and come into work, especially if an emergency happens and they're unable to because a house has fallen down or something like that. But essentially, we need to be able to notify all of our staff and see that they're able to respond during an emergency. So
Yeah.
how that happens is the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA. They send out something called a national warning system message, and that uses another piece of software, alerting software, and then
Yep.
that gets sent out to only a specific kind of a handful of people per organisation.
Okay.
Unfortunately, or fortunately rather, we've got 30, just over 30 people working at Remo, but you're only allowed to have five people on the contact list. So we need a way to kind of disseminate that national warning system message to all of our staff, and then basically see that they've read it. And then
Yep.
if they're able to respond, then we kind of have a list of available staff that can kind of respond at any one time. So
So So let me
sorry.
let me just stop you there. You're only allowed. So what you mean by that, I guess, you're only allowed to have five people on the list for the message from NEMA, right? So you can't have
Correct. Yeah.
any. So you can't have all 30 staff on there. You have to have five maximum, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
in the past, we've kind of had solutions of just kind of forwarding to staff using like a external e-text system and just forwarding an email. But we
Right.
found that it's really difficult because all of these responses come back to our on-call duty officer.
Yep.
And if all of our staff are just acknowledging that they've received an email or receiving this text, it's just too
Yep.
much to handle, right? So we just need one place to kind of consolidate all of these responses.
Yep.
Yeah, so basically just have a dashboard for that duty officer to read who is available and who's received the message.
Okay. Cool. So you've got this message coming in from NEMA, and you need that to trigger another message going out to all 30 staff, or just does it depend on the type of scenario or the message that's coming in from NEMA, or is it always going to the same people?
Yeah, so they test the system quite a lot, right? So a lot of the time they'll send out test messages, and because of that, we've actually used Fact24 to kind of put in some deliberate conditions in place, right? That
Yeah.
when that email gets sent out, if it meets a kind of specific these
Yeah.
specific
Okay.
criteria that I guess we'll have a look at in a moment,
Yep.
then it will get sent to our staff, right? So if it's just a test message, not everybody needs to see that.
Okay.
It's only really for things like national advisories and national warnings that we want it to go to our staff. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Cool. So that message coming in from NEMA will potentially have, maybe in the subject or something, it'll have test. If it's a test, it'll have other keywords in it depending on what the issue is, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we've used Fact24 is NEMA have kind of a standard message template for all of the messages that they will send out through the national warning system.
Yep.
The ones that we're interested in are national advisories and national warnings. So the way that we've set up Fact24 is that if the subject line of the email contains that advisory or contains warning, then we know that it needs to go to our staff. If it's a
Yep.
regular test message, it will basically only contain the words test message, and we can just ignore that.
Okay. And then because I'm assuming you personally get that actual message from NEMA anyway. So you see that, and then I don't know how you've set it up, but you may also get the message from Fact24 if it's a real situation and you need to do something, so you know that that's gone out from Fact24 because you're receiving that Fact24 message as well as that NEMA message, right?
Yeah, and we have a number of stuff like that, right? That receive the actual message from NEMA, but then they also are in our Fact24 system, so we can capture that. And basically, what we've done is just only had specific, communication mediums for their contact set up, so they only actually receive it through the app instead of getting the phone call and the text like all the other stuff. So that their phone isn't going wild when a national warning system comes out with 3 different calls and 5 different texts, 10 emails.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I think that's a good way to use the technology. It's like, if people know how to use the app and they know that if they get a message on the app, they need to pay attention, then that's great. I think some other people using this technology will just blast people on all channels to basically tell them how important it is. But it all depends on your training, really, and within your own organization. So that's great. So it'd be great if we can kind of see how you set that up within Fact24. Are you happy to quickly show us?
Yeah, for sure.
Perfect.
Okay, so actually, I might just take your advice here. Do you think it's better to do Connectivity Hub first? Go
to Connectivity. Let's go to Connectivity Hub. So we'll start with the start of the use case, basically. So go into Connectivity Hub. Okay, so this is what we call the Connectivity Hub, and this is where, as the name probably hopefully suggests, it's where you can connect other stuff into Fact24. So if you go down the left-hand side and just click on that, the second one down, if you just do the eyeball thing on that rule. That's it. So this is the criteria. If you then just scroll down a little bit. So what this kind of does is, if you we'll go through all of this quickly. So if you go back up to the top again, please, Harley. So we have I'll talk about it, and then you can talk about some of it in a bit. So what is set up here with WREMO is an email we call it an email quick start. You can also have an SMS quick start. So that means that you're triggering an alert from Fact24 from another email or from another SMS if you set up the SMS. So the recipient email, so this is a unique email address that you can send a trigger email to. So we've set this up effectively. NEMA NWS is kind of the bit that we kind of configured, and then the rest is kind of random string of characters to give a unique email address. So like Harley was just saying, if NEMA send an email, so Harley has worked with NEMA so that they send the email to this unique email address, we know that is an email that we should take note of in the system and potentially trigger another alert if we get an email to that email address. So there are other criteria, which we'll go over in a second. So if you scroll down a bit more, please, Harley. So we've just called, so the rule settings, we've just, so we have that unique email address, which we just talked about. The rule settings are further rules that we can set up to govern whether an alert is triggered or not. So we've just called it something called NEMA NWS trigger. The alarm there is an alarm which we'll look at in a second, which is set up within Fact24 that will be triggered if the criteria is actually reached, that we are going to go through in a minute. The rules are just down below. That's perfect. So message template, there is the template we're going to use. But these are the rules that Harley has set up. So do you want to talk? Are you okay to talk through this a little bit?
Yeah. So just like you said, one of our contacts for our organisation, one of our 5 contacts, is that NEMA, the email address from above, right? So
yep.
If that email receives anything, well, any email at the moment, but if it receives an email from NEMA, because it's basically the only thing, only recipient or sender it recognises, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
If it receives that and the subject contains advisory or the subject contains warning, then we know that it needs to go out to our staff, right? But we've also just added in a little caveat as well that the subject doesn't contain test. So that it's just in case if we either do a test advisory or test warning, it doesn't actually trigger the system. But if it meets either of those thresholds, because we have the or statement in there, basically it just goes, yes, this is where we trigger that message template.
Oh, excellent. So basically, like you say, if the subject contains advisory or it contains warning, it will potentially trigger an alert from Fact24, obviously coming to that unique email address from an email address that you recognize. And like you say, if it also includes the word test as another condition, then it will not trigger. Yes, so I'm kind of saying that rather than the other way. But if it does not contain test, then it will also trigger the alarm.
Yeah.
So that's how it's set up. Perfect. Thank you, Harley. So now we can kind of just go back to the top and go back to Fact24. Perfect. Hopefully that makes sense. So essentially, there's an email coming from Nima to a unique email address set up within Fact24. It's coming from an email address that Harley recognizes, or we've kind of set up within the system. So the system recognizes the email address it's coming from, plus it needs some specific words in the title of the email, and it needs to not contain the word test, so that Harley's team does not get alerts if it contains the word test. Hopefully that all makes sense. So, and then what happens next is Harley has set up. So you've got two. I think it was the national warning system alert that it triggers. That's right, isn't it, Harley?
Yep. I can speak to this, I guess. We can even jump into it, but essentially, if it meets that criteria, right, the one that we had selected in the connectivity hub is to trigger this alarm here, which is the national warning system alert. Yep. The reason that there is actually a second one, which is called parallel, is just because the first one basically it takes the body of the email that Nima sends. So if it's a national advisory or a national warning, it will take all the information. Usually, it will contain information about a potential tsunami threat, if earthquakes happen, something like that, and it will give you kind of some specifics around that, right? So our staff obviously want to see that. So that triggers this one, which takes that body of the email and sends it out to all our staff. Perfect. We also have a second parallel alarm that happens alongside that actually just sends that kind of more just generic alert saying that a national warning system or a national advisory message has been sent out, and then that goes across all of these other channels, right? So it's not just the email.
Okay.
And it doesn't contain that massive body of information that they don't necessarily need to read over a text message, right? Because it could be, ended up being like 10 text messages long, the body of the email. So we've just made it so the text and the phone call and the app alert basically just really generic. Check your email for national warning, and acknowledge this message.
Got it, because those messages from Nima can be really long, I guess, containing a lot of information.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. No, that makes sense. And that national warning system parallel is triggered automatically when you get the national warning system alert triggered, right?
Absolutely. So in the setting of the national warning system alert, there's actually a section that we just go and select to trigger a parallel alarm, and then we've just named this one parallel just so it's easy to understand what's happening.
Okay, fantastic. That's really good. And then I don't think we really need to go into anything else. Obviously, we don't need to go into it, but you've got if you just kind of hover over that little person-y type thing on the left. So don't go into any of these because we don't want to show people's contact details or anything. But if you click on persons, obviously you've got your 30 staff set up with their names and contact details in their persons list.
Yeah.
And you have how many groups do you have set up? Is it just one for the whole of WREMO? Or?
Yeah, so at the moment it's just one because everyone receives those alerts.
Okay. Yep.
But kind of going forward, our next step is basically just to look at how we can use this alerting system in other ways for the organisation. So not just national warnings, how we can alert staff, how we can use it for potentially activating emergency operations centres. So sending out just kind of alerts to specific groups, and then from there we're looking at as well as sending it to all of our staff who work in emergency operations centres. So all of the council staff that part of their role descriptions are basically, if an emergency happens, they'd be in an emergency operations centre working on a function desk. And that's kind of where we would use these groups just to segment them and then send out alerts. So we need function managers for this desk, or we need logistics staff for this. So, that's potentially where we're looking going forward.
Absolutely. No, that sounds great. I mean, I'm really, because we don't have this use case very frequently where people trigger from another message. Obviously, we can do it because we've just shown you how you do it, but it doesn't happen that frequently. It's usually more of a kind of an organizational mobilization kind of tool, really, but which is more of a manually triggered alarms or situations, really. But so that was really interesting to go through that use case. Thank you very much, Harley. And yeah, thanks very much for speaking to us today, and we'll catch up again, I'm sure.
Awesome, thank you.